Hello and welcome to this edition of Dynamic CISO LinkedIn Live, where we invite thought leaders, acknowledged professionals, and practitioners for a no holds barred conversation on important and pertinent burning issues. Now, before I introduce a thoroughly introduced guest on today's show, who needs little or no introduction at all, but I would like to spend around one minute, precisely 1 minute, to just set the context for today's discussion. And I'm certainly not going to dive into numbers or data because that is available for all of us. To say that from the early months of 2020 till now, it has been a time of security nightmares and challenges. That would be hugely an understatement. This past 1 year has forced the entire C-suite to be mostly up and running, mostly sleepless. If we talk of the CISOs particularly, they are in an even more critical situation to help businesses become as much usual as possible, and yet plug in those dark holes to safeguard their organizations from cyber and digital risks. CISOs are made to rethink just about everything they were doing from a strategy point of view to the viability of remote workforce point of view, and also securing from the unknown. I mean, most of these threats were coming from not so unknown actors, but so suddenly that the faces were not known. In our numerous conversations over the past 1 year with the CISOs and InfoSec leaders about navigating this new normal, the same questions kept popping up, kept emerging. Are organizations more or are they less secure today? How do we pull off the balancing act of supporting the scattered workforce in an absolutely perimeterless world which maintains business continuity? How are we navigating hybrid workforce and executive needs? So without any ado, to discuss these issues in detail and also talk about a CISO's life in the current situation, we have got a very old, very good friend, Samir Ratolikar, a renowned InfoSec professional, a reputed security thought leader, and also currently working as Executive Vice President and the Chief Information Security Officer of one of India's largest and most reputed banks, HDFC Bank. Welcome to the show, Samir. It is indeed a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you so much, Rahul. My pleasure.
Great. So let me begin with some warm-up questions, and these are absolutely not related to profession or to any cyber hazard. In the last 18 odd months, they have cast a long and dark shadow of uncertainty, while still compelling certain professionals to stay awake most of the time. How has this time been for you as a father, as a husband, as a son, and of course as a CISO? Tell us about your experiences without any inhibition, no holds barred.
Okay. So, as a father, as a son, as a husband, I think the days were very good because you got to see them. Everybody is working from home. You talk to them, you enjoy the time with them. You spend time, deciding what is to be done on the weekend. So basically, you get a lot of quality time by interacting with your close ones. I got to spend a lot of time with my mom as well, off and on in between the coffee breaks, in the tea breaks, or the lunch tables and all. So that's a very positive side of this. We also, got to know some good cooking skills. You got to know how to make the round chapatis. You got to know how to make a good chutneys. So whatever you feel to relish on a day, on a weekend, I think you have a good time to contribute yourselves, either verbally or with your hands. So that's on a lighter vein. As a CISO, life was, very tough. Why I'm saying this is, see, pandemic, working from home was a completely unexplored, uncharted, unprecedented territory. No one ever anticipated that we will have to witness this level of model, and probably a new normal. You know? So no one was prepared like us. So no CISO for that matter. So tough time, a bit tactfully or tactically, how to ensure that the business is continued, or as you rightly said, the business continuity is ensured. At the same time, the cyber security risks are mitigated, handled, managed appropriately, reasonably well. I think a big challenge, uh, for all the CISOs, and hats full, and I'm really want to congratulate the complete InfoSec practitioners and the CISO community for navigating last 18 months fairly well. Fairly well, Rahul, at least in the context of the Indian subcontinent. And but we handled it tactically. We handled it reasonably well, and that's how we are.
No, I completely agree. And there is no point in always beating around the bush that, things have been abnormal, things are out of control. Wherever there is a deserving, accolade to be given, congratulations to be given, I think we must. And as you rightly said, and I completely echo your thought, that the Indian security professionals actually had worked their way up and worked very hard to not only keep their flock together, flock motivated, the teams motivated, but keep their organizations by and large absolutely secured from any major catastrophe or any major incident. I agree with you.
I also, want to say that we always call the hospital people, all the other people as frontline workers. I think in the corporate community, the InfoSec should be called the frontline for the pandemic. And saying that, sir, you're a CISO of one of the largest bank, and a part of very important and a critical infrastructure. Were you afraid at any point of time when you hear about the brutal cyber attacks which are attacking the organizations of the corporate left, right, and center? Or would you just say it's an aggregation in intensity and nothing new? How did this disruption force you to change this mindset or reset it?
Okay, well, if you ask me whether I got afraid of it, so perhaps answer is no. But were we all concerned? Yes, right? Even now, there is a lot of concern about this new normal, about this change in the business models, and the way we are supposed to manage the revenue sheet, right? The balance sheet numbers, at the same time ensuring the complexity or evolution happening in this new normal, right? So that's how the way to look at it. In my view, it's going to be the new normal, which means the hybrid workforce, the remote working is going to be a new normal. May not be 100%, but to a great extent within the organization, because people have seen last 18 months that business can happen, right? By making sure the right risk management practices and the right digitalization of your journey, so that people, customers, consumer can work from home and can be delivered the businesses or the business processes. Uh, so there is definitely a concern, as I said, and so everyone, in my view, is sort of trying to address this tactically at that point in time. Do we have the right strategy? I mean, rather, we had no. Okay. Do we have the right strategy now? Answer is yes. Okay, because we got reasonably fair time, last 18 months were good enough to think, to introspect internally, to discuss, deliberate among your teammates, with business leaders and trying to see what should be the way forward. What should be the low-hanging fruits. As I said, the tactical approach. What should be the short-term approach of 3 to 6 months in terms of the business initiatives or wrapping the business initiatives with the right risk management framework, and what should be the long term, which is like maybe 2 years down the line, where the world is moving. So we got a good time to sort of understand these three elements and put down the strategies of right, if I may call, or the business aligned, the new normal aligned, or the remote work for aligned cybersecurity.
So basically, as a CISO, you did spend a lot of sleepless nights, but that was because of concern and not fear.
True. You are absolutely right. And let me be very honest. Yes, in the initial part of this pandemic, there were sleepless nights. As I said, because of the complexity, because of the lack of visibility or this complete new normal. And as I said, this is completely unprecedented, uncharted territory for each one of us. So there were sleepless nights, there were issues, there were challenges, but that comes the leadership, right? So, and as I said, the CISO role is all about being, a leader, right? Not only a thought leader per se, but because you need to take care of your employees, you need to take care of their morals. At the same time, you need to know that this is a very challenging era and how to handle it. So I think that's what I said. The CISO community, at least globally, especially in our country, has handled this crisis, if I may call, right? Not only the incident, but a crisis reasonably well. Okay. So you are right. You are absolutely right. So, and that's how we are today.
So, Samir, if we take an analogy from the disaster management that happens with warnings, I mean, when technology is used to create some mechanism to forewarn people, for example, if it is a cyclone or something similar. In this case, it was somehow it was, there was absolutely zero time that organizations got as a warning. Do you think that doing things in that manner, did that put security professionals in kind of a dock where very less time given to equip large organizations with large thousands of workforce to be working remotely? In cases of banks, I think banks were allowed to function in a limited capability, limited capacity, but still a large number of people were working from home, and it was a very sensitive, critical infrastructure.
Yeah, that's right. So fundamentally, how we should be approaching, right? Look, when there is a complexity, when there is a sort of uncharted territory, and wherein there is a very, very less or limited sort of warnings given to you about a situation, in my view and my personal view, in such situations, we should be handling this, this particular model with a little bit of conservatism. Now, why I'm saying conservatism is this is not the era to just succumb under the pressure of a business folks or your, for that matter, the top management, and say that, okay, business was completely normal pre-lockdown or pre-COVID era. Now business is suffering a lot. Okay. So let us sort of dilute the risk management framework, and allow us to completely work, the way we want to work, like the pre-COVID era. Probably the answer is no. In my view, the CISO should be able to explain the situations to the business leaders and make them understand that, guys, in this era of a different business model, if you want to sort of compare yourselves or go with the revenue numbers like pre-COVID, that's not possible. You have to take a hit, right? Because this is a completely new. I mean, nobody would be able to confidently say that we are 100% secure. So it's a tactical way of firefighting. So allow us some time. Let us go conservatively. To give an example, when in our case, when the lockdown started, naturally the pressure started mounting about giving the virtual desktops, or for example the VPNs. Okay, we strictly decided collectively the bank saying that we will not allow the bring your own device.
Mhm.
No, if it cost us to wait for another a month, couple of months more for the laptops to be made available, let us wait.
Mhm.
But let us ensure that our risk management or a cybersecurity posture doesn't get dilute under the business pressures. And that is exactly the culture of the institution comes in, Rahul.
True.
Okay, where we being a conservative but a customer savvy institution, we ensured and we fortunately struck a good balance between what was required at that point in time by not diluting the security posture drastically, but at the same time taking a little bit of risk management calls, but
Hmm.
not a very aggressive calls, maintain the conservatism, at the same time allow the business to grow.
No, I think, yeah, that's what is called part of wisdom. That you don't unleash the organization in want of doing business as usual, because there are ramifications of a very different order. And being conservative, I think, was wiser than letting loose everything, because as it is, things were going out of perimeter. And from a security professional's point of view, I think that was the most important challenge: how to still keep controls, um, without allowing them to be exposed too much, and how to keep the business as usual, how to keep the business as much usual as possible.
That's
So if
right.
yeah, so if I now come down to some very transactional points where a CISO is um, playing a very pivotal role in the organization. So what major new patterns of attacks or hacks or disruption caused by the threat actors did you witness in the past 1 year? Did the global incidents change the management's, the board's expectations from a CISO, from you?
Well, so when I'm saying that the attacks or the breaches we witnessed, it doesn't mean that we HDFC Bank witnessed. Fortunately, we did not have any cyber attack or a cyber incident per se in the pandemic. But going by the trends or the disruption which is happening around the globe, in my view, the ransomware is growing rapidly, right? The supply chain attack is growing at a specific pace because uh, the people have realized that the large work from home. I mean, when I'm saying people, means the hacking community, that the employees, the workforce is working from home. So physically on premise, the workforce is not there. Okay. So perhaps the organization's perimeter, as you rightly said, is blurred. The differences have been diluted. So with this assumption and to some extent a reality, the hacking group have also started sending a lot of phishing emails to the remote workforce, to the employees, to the customers. At the same time, the hacking community, the hackers have also realized that instead of targeting the organizations one to one, the organizations, did somebody say anything?
No, no, no. Please carry on.
Okay. So the people have realized, the hacking group, I mean, that instead of targeting the organizations one to one, it is also a sort of little bit of easy to target the vendors, right? The supply chain related attacks and then target. So in my view, and that's how we have seen the attacks of SolarWinds and all. So supply chain ransomware is going at a very fast pace in terms of this completely perimeter-less world, perimeter-less organizations. At the same time, Rahul, one of the most important things which sort of, I would not say concerning to me, but it is a very important part of our lives now and going forward is the cloud.
Mhm.
The cloud market is growing, globally 23, 24%, and in India almost, I don't know, but maybe 28, 29%. I was reading one of the couple of research reports. So in the days to come also, cloud will take a lot of big shape. So cloud related attacks related to cloud misconfiguration is going to grow probably in a big way. So I think these three elements and the fact that today we are in a hybrid era where some footprints are there on premise. Core banking in case of banking is on premise.
Right.
Now, it's a very interesting word. Core banking is on premise, net banking is on premise, mobile banking is on premise. A lot of retail assets, consumer finance related applications on premise, but a reasonably good footprints are also going to grow in the cloud. They're growing. They're growing with us as well. So for the CISOs like us, we need to, a banking, if I have to represent the banking industry, we need to manage the on-premise, which used to be the bread and butter, the brick and mortar in a way. And now you have one more footprints in the cloud. So managing A, managing B, and a combination of A plus B, that's a challenge. Okay, so new disruption, new world. It's a challenge, but that's how, I think the people are sort of managing with a combination of our old definition of people, processes, and technology. Perhaps that will remain. And as we discuss later, as we'll touch upon these areas.
Sure. Thank you so much. Smriti, you can carry on.
Thank you. Sir, specifically in the FMCG industry, this new norm, in the new normal, there is this new term which is being coined, phygital. A physical plus digital is, I think that's the key which is going to go forward. Now, these kind of things which are come in the new normal came in because of the situation of the pandemic, and most of our companies which obviously didn't expect this coming, were most of, and I'm not generalizing this, but were found off guard or ill-equipped to handle this situation. This is very natural. However, there was enough time from then till now, almost 18 months, to change and alter the security posture and make it more robust, resilient. So, how did you as a CISO prepare this for the future using this as a classic test bed for learning?
Well, you are absolutely right. Cyber resiliency is the key. Amalgamation of information security, cyber security, and business continuity is going to be the key, because you can't say as a CISO that I will protect my organization. We will be able to detect the attack fairly in a reasonable period of time. But when it comes to responding the attack or giving response to the attack, then it comes to on somebody else, like for example, IT disaster recovery team or the application team, etc. I think it's a one team, with one owner trying to manage the cyber resiliency, like as I said, with a combination of InfoSec tools and processes and the business continuity related arrangements. So that is being, having said, this particular point, you are right. So, and as I said in the initial conversation, the initial thought process was a bit tactical, that just manage the crisis, allow the people, to work, allow the employees at home to work. We need a productivity. We can't ensure that the people are, sitting at home, but they can't work. I mean, nobody would expect, neither HR nor the business people. Same goes with customers as well, because the customer experience expectations, the customer experience in the digitalization in the pandemic will remain same. If they lost their credit card, they want the request to be fulfilled immediately. But at the same time that the people in the call center, the physical people, are not there, right? So all those elements required, or perhaps data points, gave us in HDFC Bank, in InfoSec team, decent time. And as you rightly said, 18 months is a good period of time to discuss, tweak, retune, refine your InfoSec strategies to see that, how we go from a typical InfoSec 1.0, if I may call, which used to be on-premise, a traditional InfoSec, to a InfoSec 2.0, which will be more perimeter less, which will be more cloud driven, which will be more hybrid, and which will be with more scattered workforce. So with these four elements in place, four sort of goals in place, we defined our InfoSec strategy, right? Which will probably take care of these elements reasonably well. We also, sort of use the NIST standard framework. We did not do any rocket science of protect, detect, and respond, and say that how to protect the scattered workforce, how to ensure, and that basically goes back to my initial conversation when I said we did not allow BYOD. Even today, we are not allowing BYOD, right? We wanted the security posture to remain tight, even in the scattered workflows. We equally want the visibility with the scattered workforce about what activity they are doing, what kind of attacks are getting generated out of the with the remote workforces from their laptops with our infrastructure. Is somebody trying to take advantage of unsecured Wi-Fi? Because that's a fact. Today we all are working from home, and Wi-Fi perhaps may not be as secure as the wired network. So if any man in the middle sort of attack trying to happen, so what visibility do we have? So these are some of the pointers which sort of got fed into our InfoSec strategy. And in the last 18 months, that's how we have evolved. Is the strategy complete today? No. We are still evolving. Still, the strategy is undergoing the refinement, retricking, based on the, for example, DNS level attacks, which are also sort of increasing. And although there are isolated incidents, but you never know. So these are the new attacks taking, perhaps the advantage of the current situation or current perimeter is less world under scattered workforce. And that's how the strategy is undergoing the changes in align with the business. But that's a world we are in. As long as you understand, you study the market, you read a lot, you discuss with the vendor, the startups, because I mean, forget about us, look at the startups. They want to deliver to the clients like us. At the same time, they want to maintain the security with the same speed of the agility and the transformation, digital transformation. So we are learning from them as well, and then that's how we are managing this.
So as you said, you'll move from an InfoSec 1.0 to a 2.0. I think the role of a CISO, what I see from my point where I am sitting, the role has evolved from a security master to a risk taker to a boardroom member, and I think that's a part, in evolving your strategy for the InfoSec. This has been a big evolvement for the CISO community, is what I think.
No, that's right. That's right. So thanks to the progressive regulations, as recent as a digital payments security master direction from RBI. Yeah. So progressive regulation or regulators have played a great role in giving visibility to the CISOs, at least the banking industry or BFSI CISOs, banking, telco, insurance for that matter. And it is also the CISOs, untiring efforts towards securing the organizations, trying to convince the board members, trying to balance between the business, the digital transformation which is happening, and the information security risk management framework. Obviously, these all things have led to a lot of respect to the CISOs, and as you rightly said, perhaps the board seat, where they are equally getting respect and they are getting a chance to contribute in the business discussions. So that is how it has evolved. But one important thing, which is perhaps, if I must emphasize, is also the fact that the CISOs have also learned the art of not, speaking in only a technical language of these breaches and that breaches and cross-site scripting and SQL injection to DNS attacks for that matter to the board member. But at the same time, translating or converting the discussion from a security-centric to more towards a risk and the impact centrics, more to the business numbers, saying that if you don't implement, for example, say bring your own key for a cloud initiative, then the chances of your data getting, in case of a breach, getting into the hands of the fraudsters or wrong hands increases. So BYOK, bring your own key, or managed encryption is required in case of a cloud. So is an important element. So as long as you explain them this in this context or in this language of risk and the impact, the boardroom understand. That's how the synergies gets formed between the CISOs and the board members, or between the CISOs and the business leaders.
Wonderful. As I said, Samir, that we will break the monotony and we'll take some of the questions from our viewers and the delegates who have joined. So our friend Siddharth Tiwari, who is from UCO Bank, is asking a couple of questions, and I will put them to you. What can we do to elevate our fears while using UPI and apps like Google Pay, etc., where there are multiple instances of phishing, ransomware, etc.?
Okay, so you say Siddharth, right?
Yes.
Yes. So hi, Siddharth. Good question. Look, there is something the UPI provider need to follow, which they are to some extent, and there is also push from NPCI to the this PSP app service providers about certain controls like device binding, like protection from the jailbroken devices, making sure that there is a reasonable SMS message related securities, etc. And few many measures. So we have evolved to a great extent, in the last couple of years in terms of securing the UPI transactions. So that is on them. What is on us? Most important is the education. Okay, we need to know about these phishing attacks and phishing attacks happening, on the UPIs. So customer education is going to be the, if I may use a silver bullet, perhaps, yes, in terms of the one of the most important bit, it is a silver bullet, because I need to know that I'm not supposed to be panicked if I get a phishing call or phishing emails from anybody for that matter. As long as we understand that, we knows, that I'm not supposed to respond to such fraudulent calls, I think the transactions will be safer. Trust me, most of us are transacting on net banking, at least, if not, I will go back, but since 2000, 2001, if not 2005, okay? So it's been 15 to 16 years. How many of us have lost our money? Okay, perhaps very few of them. So there is a gullibility angle associated with it. But as I said, as long as these service providers, as long as the institutions like us, where we provide the UPI apps and we are as an intermediary, we basically manages those gateways and the infrastructure. And third element is you as a user. If we take care of our areas, I think the transaction will be secured. I don't think so there is an issue in that. But yes, there is certain element, which we need to work, is when the amount gets from a wallet, for example, then it's very difficult to trace the culprit. Okay, so we need to also equally work with the law enforcement agencies and awareness with at their end, hand-holding with them to see that, when in case of any crisis, how do you respond to such incident is also equally important way to handle it. So there is no one answer, but these are the 3-4 elements with which we can contain it in a much better way.
So thank you. There is another question by our friend Jaideep Khanduja. I mean, it's a very witty comment and a question that how can you have sleepless nights without a concern? So the question here is that what were some of the major concerns that CISO had or continues to have, while wading his or her way through these very turbulent and uncertain times?
So look, Jaideep, sleepless nights and the concerns are, in my view, two different things, right? Concern will come in a personal life, concern we will have in our professional life as well. But probably it may not result into a sleepless nights. But because you know that these are going to be the part and parcel of your life. Okay. As I said, and that's how you are on this job of an InfoSec leader. Okay. It's a conscious call. So things will not be as easy. It will perhaps become more complex as we grow along and as different digital transformation take shapes. Uh, Having said this, see, if you ask me today, my concern is out of 125,000 of employees, maintaining the security posture of these endpoints, extremely important area. At any point in time, there cannot be any 100% of InfoSec, which means if 99% of my employees have been sort of brought under the tight security posture, still I'm leaving almost 1,000, 2,000 people open to those kind of phishing emails, ransomware emails. Now imagine if out of these 1,000 or 1,500 of employees, if 5 employees click a malicious attachment having no antivirus available on their machine on that specific day, it's a nightmare. Having, a patch management happening through an application service provider, and we have hundreds of application vendors, right? As recent as your infrastructure facility management vendors like Landesk or SolarWinds to as big as, the likes of Oracle or a Backbase or, multiple other vendors.
True.
Or Microsoft, for example. So supply chain attacks. So through the garb of a patch management, you never know what code is getting installed in your setup.
Absolutely.
So these are, if I may, say that these are the two prominent, attacks which are really concerning to us. I think there is no harm, right? And that is how we are trying to sort of see that if we have to protect our infrastructure, if we have to detect such attacks in a fair amount of time and then respond to those attacks in terms of a micro segmentation or in terms of having arrangement with a forensic service provider, we all need to do all what is possible on the planet Earth, right, within our risk appetite. But that's a fact.
Great. Smriti, you can go on.
Thanks. So I'm going to ask you a question. We've been talking about the good practices that you have adopted for a while, and you have a very extremely vast and varied experience, which already Rahul spoke about. Could you suggest a guide, rule book, or a quick reference checklist for the CISOs that they should keep ready in these times or even the times to come?
Very simple, if I may answer for that matter. Focus on fundamentals. Focus on hygiene. When I'm saying focus on fundamentals and hygiene, I mean the focus on the patch management processes. Focus on the change management processes. Focus on the privilege ID management related policies and processes and solutions. Okay. Focus on user awareness. Do a red teaming on a continuous basis. So I think if we divide it into two areas, one is focusing on the basic hygiene, patch management, change management, vulnerability management, and have a very sort of sound process around these and the visibility around these and the metrics around these. I think we are good. We are good. And why I'm saying is there is a data around that. If you see even the recent the attacks or the recent incidents happened with the malware and the ransomware, most of them were related to the absence of the right patch management. So having focus on these fundamentals is extremely important for all of us. Having said this, investment on a certain tactical and strategic solutions, like for example, privilege ID management to protect the administrative users, micro-segmentation to contain the attacks, anti-ransomware measures, application control measures, another most important things. To contain the patch management cycle, host intrusion prevention system with virtual patching. I think some of these solutions are also going to help as an important tool for the security leaders like us in case of any crisis. Now, strategically, this is all about the tactical approach. Strategically, as you said, Smriti, perhaps in the next 2 years, 3 years, 4 years down the line, what should be the focused areas? My personal view, security automation. Okay, automate the processes as simple as the vendor management. Today, if you want to carry out the vendor risk assessment or vendor audits, manual auditing the vendor, absolutely impossible. Maintaining 100 vendor audits, maintaining via emails, maintaining the evidences and as a central repository, track the compliances. Humongous job, not possible. Automate it. Security incident management. Is it possible to manually contain those attacks? You have 50 to 60 security tools, right from firewalls to your anti-APT consoles, antivirus consoles, to intrusion prevention consoles. So automation and orchestration around these security technologies by means of, and to put it up simply, the way the security technologies talk to each other using these native APIs, extremely important. A very strategical aspects going forward. Aggregation of threat intelligence, perhaps manually ingesting the unstructured and structured threat intelligence, we won't be able to effectively handle it. So making sure that there is a right mechanism in the form of automating it, aggregating the threat intelligence, and then handling it, crucial. And last but not least, in my view, we need to focus more on the machine learning and artificial intelligence coupled with a zero trust architecture as the way to manage this particular new normal in the next few years. Because if you don't implement machine learning based threat models to detect your cyber attacks on a regular basis, the fraudsters on the other side, with easy availability of the infrastructure on cloud, right? They will be able to do that. And today, these people, these organized criminals have money, have time, and the resources to target the infrastructure or institutions. Okay, so no surprises if they develop the machine learning models to target you.
Absolutely.
So it's a good weapon for them. Okay, so you also need to equally have these mechanisms in place to protect yourself from these emerging tactics. So something, as I said, quick hanging fruit, focus on fundamental. Something, as I said, little tactically in terms of not only the hygiene and the fundamentals, but also certain important security solutions like privilege ID management, etc. And the anti-APT for them or anti-ransomware measures, and something more long-term for in the days to come for all of us, which is nothing but a zero trust and the machine learning, the way forward. That's my view.
No, I think it is. I mean, this particular question and the answer to this question is the icing on the cake for this whole conversation. And if I can sum it up, that you have to be very careful about the basics, which do not go anywhere, that you have to do as part of your hygiene. The second part of it is, I mean, basics includes the patch management, the change management, the vulnerability management. The second part of it is a little tactical, in which you need to look at some fresh investments like privilege ID, identity management, microservices, anti-APT, anti-ransomware. And then came the third part of it, where you're talking of 2 to 4 years of 2 to 4 years of horizon, where you very beautifully explained how important it is to automate and orchestrate how important it is to have an automated vendor management where you have so many vendors to manage and you can't think of doing it manually. Similarly, aggregation of threat intelligence and incident management. I think that's the recipe for success. However, playing a devil's advocate on this point, how much it is doable, Samir, with shrinking or static security budgets?
That's right. So there comes the risk appetite of an organization, and there comes the risk appetite statement, rather, for the organization. So you are right. Nothing comes without budget, and the budget will come as long as we are able to convince the top management on the board. And the way we can effectively convince the top management of the board is when you simplify the security, right? When we explain them the security in a very basic English, and as I said, risk and impact, we'll get a budget. Having said this, I know where you're coming from. See, there are a lot of open source material, open source tools are available, Rahul, right? And I don't know, but probably we sort of have a very conservative approach toward the open sources in especially in the banking industry, which is not wrong, right? But in case of those organizations which are not heavily regulatory driven, and if for them, if there is a budget constraints, then in my view, a lot of open source material they can use. Point number one. Point number two, focus on the fundamentals, because there itself 50% the attacks will be thwarted. Trust me. And point number three, simple go through, say, a SANS top 20 controls. Focus on asset management, having a proper visibility over your information assets. Focus on unauthorized, authorized softwares on the endpoint, because 90% of the attacks today are on endpoint. So manage it. Focus on the privilege ID management and escalation tools. And at least have your security operations center to where the logs have been ingested in a central tool called SIEM, and there is a right monitoring in place. And again, each of these areas, there are good number of service providers called MSPs, managed service provider, which will help you out. So you need not to create a data lake at your end, but you can have a remote monitoring with the service. Then you can ship your logs to a service provider and manage. So different models are available depending on your risk appetite and depending on your budgets. No model or no approach is inferior than other. It is a way you think what is relevant, what is important, and how to ensure that 1 point, 100% visibility. That's a key. If you are able to achieve this using whatever the construct you adopt, the game is yours.
So if I may ask a little out of turn question, while this whole thing was panning out that employees will work from their own locations, and that was resulting into a widening of attack surface, because each and every IP, each and every device, endpoint, edge device was kind of vulnerable, kind of targeted through any means. So how did you plan to use your resources more effectively at that time, so that all these gaps can be plugged in? I mean, very, very curious question from my side.
Okay, well, so we also learned a lot at that point in time. Okay, so as I said, we decided collectively that we will go conservatively. We will not allow the bring your own device. We will buy the devices and give it to the employees. So it's an organization supply devices. Point number one.
Okay.
Point number two, large concern, how to ensure that, and with the fact that a Wi-Fi in the house of our employees or practically not as secure as a wired network on premise. So chances of compromised Wi-Fi were pretty high. Even they are pretty high even today. So we have given the access to our employees using VDI, a virtual desktop. We did not go for a VPN. With VDI, we have implemented a sandboxing environment with which our employees even now are accessing our applications and our infrastructure securely from organization supplied devices. Third point, what about even those devices, if there are any malwares, any keyloggers? So device security was extremely crucial. So we implemented the measure whereby the application on our devices will take care of these keyloggers, these sort of malware, etc. So which means application protection kind of feature. I'm going slightly technical. So that is how the access was provided to our employees. That is point number one, which is about the protecting your workforce. Certain internet restrictions were also there because they are organization supplied devices. So naturally, specific sites were open, etc. And they were not allowed to use any other sites apart from those specific whitelisted sites. So which is about device level security. Second, we also implemented two-factor authentication on top of it. So to make sure that only a genuine people or a genuine client are accessing our infrastructure. So there is, again, a dynamism came in terms of the OTP. It's not a static, but a dynamic factor of authentication. Third aspect is how to monitor those attacks getting generated from those devices. So there, the integration of such infrastructure, such VPN, VDI infrastructure, or remote workforce computing infrastructure with your security operation tool is concerned, where the logs are ingested, the IP geolocation is monitored, etc., etc. And that's how you create the rules to monitor the infrastructure from brute force attacks, from those device level attacks, etc., etc. Point number 3, most important. A run books or a tabletop exercise in case of work from home was we realized that it is going to be extremely crucial. You put up the infrastructure, you put up the technology tools, you make the user aware about the work from home security aspects every week. Okay. Having said this, what about the incident response or the crisis management plan in case of an actual crisis supposed to happen in scattered workforce? There, a tabletop simulation have been carried out. Even today, we are doing it to make sure that what is our media management plan? What is the employees or the information security IT team, the application team, the HR team is supposed to do in case of any crisis? So that continuous tabletop exercises, simulation of your playbooks, the crisis playbooks is also equally important. And I think that's how probably we have sort of navigated and navigating, as I'm speaking, the complete this particular sort of scattered workforce and this pandemic.
I mean, the catchphrase in this whole interview that I have gathered, Samir, and I'm so proud of it, that you did not get swayed away by the by the phrases going on that you should do this to gain more, get better customer experience, and do that to serve your customers better. I mean, no VPN and having a sandboxed environment for a VDI infrastructure, device security of that depth, two-factor authentication. I mean, this is I would run this interview again and again and again and again for people to understand how one should stay on top of things without being so superficial. I mean, somebody has to go to that depth to understand that things generally don't require too much of investment if you put wisdom and do things with whatever you have. So great, Smriti, you can go on.
So, I already spoke about, your role of a, risk mitigator to a board member and, actually a business enabler. I should have, the right term to use should have been a business enabler. What is your agenda for 2021 and further?
So agenda for 2021 is make sure that every employee in my team remains motivated, right? Understand the evolving business models, understand the new normal, and then sort of delivers from home and be productive, remains productive. That's one important point. Second important point is for our customers. Okay, I want to give comfort and ensure a digital trust among, for our customers, and ensure that by being the business facilitator, business enabler, how should with our security wrapped digital offerings, increasing trust among our consumer base is established and is grows. Because for me, that is the important metrics. Okay, the way to look at it is CISO job is on two fronts: securing customers, securing the bank. Most of our conversation today, we focus on securing the bank. Okay, but when it comes to securing our customer, that is what is our focus right now. Because all institutions globally are going through this different business model because of the pandemic, and less number of people in the branches in the bank. So how to serve the customer in a much better manner, seamless manner, and how to enhance the customer experience at the same time, how to ensure that customer digital trust on our infrastructure, on our digital applications improves, okay, with our security initiatives at backend in terms of monitoring the the application accesses, application attacks, in terms of detecting detecting the anomalies, with machine learning models, etc. And in terms of more automating and orchestrating the information security processes, right? These some of these pieces are a priority or focus areas for me for the next 2 to 5 years. I don't know to what extent they will undergo the tweaking or the changes in the years to come, but that's the way I'm looking at it.
Yeah, so I think we are overshooting the time. So my last question for you, Samir, is that you spoke about keeping your team motivated, keeping them updated on the new normal. So squeezing a couple of questions into one is, one is about the motivation of the team. The second is about the motivation of the leader himself. So candidly tell me, did the workload cause stress, burnout, or anxiety? And how did you manage to keep those at bay? I mean, this will help other peers in the industry, friends in the industry, to learn that such a high pressure, strenuous job of a CISO of a large bank, keeping his customers' expectations high. I mean, meeting his customers' expectations, meeting the expectations of stakeholders, still by and large, keeping the bank, safe from all fronts. So that must have caused some stress, some burnout, some anxiety. How did you keep yourself motivated?
Well, Rahul, look, always think of the people who are sort of more, if I may use the word stressed, more involved, and under more pressure than you. Look at our business folks. Look at our collection people.
Yep.
Look at our completely retail and corporate lending team. Yeah. They need to ensure that the revenue generation or revenue stream and the balance sheet is maintained. There's a pressure. If our bank is delivering 20-22% growth, naturally the pressure on them is to maintain that growth.
Yeah.
So if I say that, if they sort of decide to be under the panic situation or anxiety or sleepless nights, they won't be able to deliver. So it's a job chosen by me. I love the job because I am able to deliver or ensure the digital trust of our customers, of our huge customers. And we are one of the largest and respectable bank in the country. To maintain that, I think that itself is a credit. The respect to this position draws, the boardroom presence this position has, that's a credit. So all those credit, respect, visibility comes with these frills of a sort of huge work pressure that is going to be there. Go for a walk, go for a jog, listen to music, have fun time with your family, friends in the evenings, spend enjoyable weekends, pursue your interest. If you are interested with the classical music, or you're interested with the jazz music, or going on a trekking. I go, occasionally to treks or to beaches on the weekends. I stay in Navi Mumbai, so in a couple of hours of drive, 70 miles, we have the good beaches. So I think that's a way to look at it. Maybe I don't do, but I keep hearing from my good gurus and friends and philosophers, my bosses, do meditation for 15-20 minutes, half an hour, a day, to keep your mind cool and calm. I think very simple. Yeah, I'm not trying to make it very complex, but that is a way to handle it.
No, I agree. There is no two ways to doubt that, because it's you cannot import something to make yourself comfortable. It's all from within, and small things that you do to drift yourself away from that situation of stress, and bring that refreshment for a while. So I have
point, sorry to interject, Rahul. Only one point I would add. See, often I've seen the people, largely the InfoSec practitioners, they don't speak up.
Yeah.
They don't speak up because of a possible fear that if I speak up, I may be treated as the hurdle to the business. Don't assume that. Friends, we have a role to play. You have been brought on this position by your top management just to ensure that not to be feared, but to be upfront, bold, clear about what is right and what is wrong. So raise your voice in a way constructively, whenever required. Speak up. That will ease your burden, because people will start understanding you. If you don't speak up, then probably you will remain under pressure. That's one point I wanted to make.
No, great. I think great addition. So I have one more question. I have a guest joining us from Oman, Muscat, Dattatreya Patnaik. He wants to ask on your point of on the point of VDI, how VDI can support BCP and DR in case of any incident if it takes place.
Okay, so the DR architecture has to be an integral part of any of your security solutions, which means the business continuity. Okay, so when I'm saying that we have set up, for example, say VDI, naturally when the VDI goes down, okay, set up, you want your employees to work in the same seamless manner. So having those DR set up on a different geographic location, and to be able to switch over to that DR in case of a disaster, or proactively in the form of disaster recovery drills, is a part of your process. It's a part of your business continuity process. Yes. I think that's what we should do. Point number two, in case employee or a people level DR, right? For example, I'm slightly double clicking it. For example, if a people from a specific device is not able to access your VDI infrastructure, right? Maybe with pandemic easing out, he can go to a nearby branch, in our case, and access. So such mechanisms of having provided to the people, whether it's a form of a centralized BCP or a people level BCP, a device level BCP at their end. I think it's a part of the process which one has to frame and make sure that they are in place.
Wonderful. We have overshot our time with you, and as you very recently in your last answer to my question, you mentioned that unwind over the weekends. I'll not hold you beyond this point. Thank you so much. It has been, I have been longing to have a freewheeling, no holds barred conversation with you for a very long time. I think you have satisfied my appetite for that. Thank you so much, Samir, for being on this show with us and sharing such a great deal of wisdom. I was thinking that how could we have converted into a masterclass to have more from you, maybe for some other occasion. Now I know where to utilize your wisdom and how to do that. Thank you so much and have a very nice weekend. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rahul, for having me here. I hope I could do justice to your expectations.
Absolutely. You have done more than the justice. I must say that. Yeah.
Now let me enjoy my fantastic sumptuous lunch.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Now.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.